The words hung in the air like poison gas, slowly filling every corner of our living room. My wife stood by the window, backlit by the afternoon sun, her silhouette sharp and defiant. "I'm with your best friend," she repeated, her voice steady, almost bored. "If you can't handle it, divorce me." I sat frozen on the couch, the coffee mug in my hand still warm. We'd been married for 8 years. 8 years of building a life together, or so I'd thought. My best friend, Daniel, had been at our wedding. He'd been the best man. He'd helped us move into this house. "How long?" I managed to ask, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. She turned to face me, and I could see the challenge in her eyes. She wanted a reaction. She wanted tears, anger, maybe violence. Something she could use later, something she could point to and say, "See? This is why I left." 6 months, she said, crossing her arms. "Maybe longer. Does it matter?" 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of him coming over for dinner, of watching football games together, of her kissing me goodbye while planning to meet him. The betrayal was a living thing, coiling around my chest, but I refused to let it show. "Why tell me now?" I asked. She shrugged, a casual gesture that made my blood run cold. "Because I'm tired of hiding. Daniel and I are in love. Real love. Not this." She gestured vaguely at our home, our life, comfortable arrangement. Comfortable arrangement. That's what she called our marriage. I thought about the late nights I'd worked to afford this house. The vacation to Italy she'd always wanted. The investment accounts I'd built, planning for our future, maybe for kids someday. "So what do you want?" I asked. "I want you to be reasonable," she said, and now I heard it, the rehearsed quality of her words. She'd practiced this. "We can have an amicable divorce. Split everything 50-50. You keep your dignity, I keep mine. No need for lawyers to get messy. 50-50. She wanted half of everything I'd built, everything I'd earned, while she ran off with a man who'd been my friend since college. "I need time to think," I said, setting down my coffee mug with deliberate care. She sighed, as if I was being difficult. "Fine. Think. But don't take too long. Daniel and I want to move forward with our lives." After she left for errands, probably to see him, I sat in the silence of our home. The shock was wearing off now, replaced by something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I went to my office and opened my laptop. I'd built a successful financial consulting business through careful planning and attention to detail. Now, I would apply those same skills to protecting everything I'd worked for. I started a new folder on my computer, password protected, documentation. Then I began to methodically list every asset we owned, every account, every investment. The house, purchased primarily with my inheritance from my father. The investment portfolio, built from my bonuses and business profits. The cars, the furniture, the vacation property. Next, I opened a new document and began writing down everything I could remember about the last 6 months. Every time she'd been at the gym for 3 hours. Every unexplained charge on the credit card. Every evening Daniel had suddenly dropped by when he knew I'd be working late. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, "Hey man, want to grab beers this weekend?" The audacity of it made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound in the empty room. He was still playing the friend, still pretending. They both were. I texted back, "Sure, sounds good." I needed to know what I was dealing with. I needed to understand their plan, their timeline, their expectations. And I needed to do it without them realizing I was 3 steps ahead. As the afternoon faded into evening, I continued my work, building my case piece by piece. I wasn't the man my wife thought she'd married, the pushover who would simply accept this betrayal and hand over half his life. She wanted a divorce? Fine. But it would be on my terms, not hers. The words hung in the air like poison gas, slowly filling every corner of our living room. My wife stood by the window, backlit by the afternoon sun, her silhouette sharp and defiant. "I'm with your best friend," she repeated, her voice steady, almost bored. If you can't handle it, divorce me. I sat frozen on the couch, the coffee mug in my hand still warm. We'd been married for 8 years. 8 years of building a life together, or so I'd thought. My best friend, Daniel, had been at our wedding. He'd been the best man. He'd helped us move into this house. How long? I managed to ask, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. She turned to face me, and I could see the challenge in her eyes. She wanted a reaction. She wanted tears, anger, maybe violence. Something she could use later, something she could point to and say, "See? This is why I left." 6 months, she said, crossing her arms. Maybe longer. Does it matter? 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of him coming over for dinner, of watching football games together, of her kissing me goodbye while planning to meet him. The betrayal was a living thing, coiling around my chest, but I refused to let it show. "Why tell me now?" I asked. She shrugged, a casual gesture that made my blood run cold. "Because I'm tired of hiding. Daniel and I are in love. Real love. Not this." She gestured vaguely at our home, our life, comfortable arrangement. Comfortable arrangement. That's what she called our marriage. I thought about the late nights I'd worked to afford this house. The vacation to Italy she'd always wanted. The investment accounts I'd built, planning for our future, maybe for kids someday. "So what do you want?" I asked. "I want you to be reasonable," she said, and now I heard it, the rehearsed quality of her words. She'd practiced this. "We can have an amicable divorce. Split everything 50-50. You keep your dignity, I keep mine. No need for lawyers to get messy. 50-50. She wanted half of everything I'd built, everything I'd earned, while she ran off with a man who'd been my friend since college. "I need time to think," I said, setting down my coffee mug with deliberate care. She sighed, as if I was being difficult. "Fine. Think. But don't take too long. Daniel and I want to move forward with our lives." After she left for errands, probably to see him, I sat in the silence of our home. The shock was wearing off now, replaced by something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I went to my office and opened my laptop. I'd built a successful financial consulting business through careful planning and attention to detail. Now, I would apply those same skills to protecting everything I'd worked for. I started a new folder on my computer, password protected, documentation. Then I began to methodically list every asset we owned, every account, every investment. The house, purchased primarily with my inheritance from my father. The investment portfolio, built from my bonuses and business profits. The cars, the furniture, the vacation property. Next, I opened a new document and began writing down everything I could remember about the last 6 months. Every time she'd been at the gym for 3 hours. Every unexplained charge on the credit card. Every evening Daniel had suddenly dropped by when he knew I'd be working late. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, "Hey man, want to grab beers this weekend?" The audacity of it made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound in the empty room. He was still playing the friend, still pretending. They both were. I texted back, "Sure, sounds good." I needed to know what I was dealing with. I needed to understand their plan, their timeline, their expectations. And I needed to do it without them realizing I was 3 steps ahead. As the afternoon faded into evening, I continued my work, building my case piece by piece. I wasn't the man my wife thought she'd married, the pushover who would simply accept this betrayal and hand over half his life. She wanted a divorce? Fine. But it would be on my terms, not hers. The next morning, I woke early, before my wife stirred. She'd come home late the previous night, smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't mine. She'd slipped into bed without a word, and I'd pretended to be asleep. Now, in the grey light of dawn, I made coffee and opened my laptop. I had taken a personal day from work, something I rarely did. Today, I needed time. First stop, our phone records. As the account holder, I had access to everything. I downloaded 6 months of call logs and text message records. The pattern was immediately obvious. Multiple calls per day to the same number, Daniel's, often lasting 30, 40 minutes. Texts at all hours. While I'd been working, while I'd been sleeping, while I'd been sitting across from her at dinner. I created a spreadsheet, documenting every call, every text, organized by date and time. The evidence was damning. Next, I examined our credit card statements more carefully. There were charges I'd noticed but dismissed. A hotel downtown, she'd said it was for a girls' spa day. A restaurant I'd never been to, a lunch with her sister. Lingerie purchases from an expensive boutique, none of which I'd ever seen her wear. I took screenshots of everything, storing them in my encrypted folder. Around 10, my phone rang. Daniel. "Hey, brother," he said, his voice warm and familiar. It made my skin crawl. "Still on for drinks this weekend?" "Absolutely," I said, keeping my tone light. "Saturday work?" "Perfect. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something anyway." "I bet you did." "Oh yeah. What's up?" "Better in person. See you Saturday." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair. So they had a timeline. They were going to tell me together, probably. Make it seem like they'd fallen in love despite their best efforts. Star-crossed lovers. The narrative was predictable. I spent the afternoon consulting with a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but one who specialized in high-asset divorces and infidelity cases. Margaret Chen was a shark in a tailored suit, with a reputation for destroying unfaithful spouses in court. "Do you live in an at-fault divorce state?" she asked, after I'd explained the situation. "Yes," I said. "Adultery is grounds for divorce, and it affects spousal support." She smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Then we have options. Lots of options. But you need to be smart about this. Don't tip your hand. Let her file if she wants to file. Let her think she's in control." "What about the assets?" I asked. "Walk me through everything." I did. The house, purchased largely with my inheritance, we had documentation proving the source of the down payment. The investment accounts, built primarily from my income. The business I'd started before we married, which had grown substantially during our marriage. With the adultery claim and the asset sources documented, we can argue against a 50-50 split, Margaret said. Especially if she's been using marital funds to support the affair. Those hotel rooms, those dinners, all paid for with what? "Our joint credit card," I said, "which I pay off every month from my business account." Her smile widened. "Even better. She's been financing her affair with your money. That plays beautifully in court." Over the next few days, I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. I came home from work, ate dinner with my wife, watched television beside her. All the while, she was texting Daniel right in front of me, not even bothering to hide her phone anymore. "You're quiet," she observed one evening. "Just tired," I said. "Big project at work." She seemed satisfied with this, returning her attention to her phone, smiling at whatever he was saying. On Thursday, I hired a private investigator. Margaret had recommended him, a former police detective who now specialized in marital cases. I gave him photos of both my wife and Daniel, their car descriptions, their schedules. "I need documentation," I told him. "Photos, video, anything that proves the affair." "How long do you need me on this?" he asked. "However long it takes to get bulletproof evidence." It took him exactly 1 day. Friday evening, he sent me a secure link to a cloud folder. Inside were dozens of photos. My wife and Daniel entering a hotel together, kissing in his car, having lunch at an outdoor cafe, holding hands across the table. The timestamps and location data were embedded in each image. I downloaded everything, added it to my documentation folder. Saturday arrived. Time for drinks with Daniel. We met at a sports bar we'd been going to for years. He ordered his usual beer, and I ordered mine. We talked about football, about work, about nothing important. He was waiting for the right moment, I could tell. Finally, During the second beer, he took a deep breath. "Listen, there's something I need to tell you," he began. I looked at him, this man I'd trusted, this person I'd considered a brother. "Go ahead." "It's about your wife and me." I waited, my face carefully neutral. He explained how they'd grown close, how it had been unexpected, how they'd tried to fight it but couldn't. He made it sound noble, inevitable. He didn't mention the hotels, the lies, the 6 months of deception. When he finished, I took a long drink of my beer. "I see," I said quietly. "You're taking this really well," he said, looking relieved and slightly confused. "Am I?" I asked. "What did you expect?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Anger. You have every right." "Yes," I interrupted. "I do." Something in my tone made him hesitate. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. I smiled. "Thanks for telling me. Really clears things up." I left him at the bar, confused and unsettled. Good. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. The week following my conversation with Daniel, my wife's behavior shifted. She was emboldened now, practically giddy. She started coming home later, sometimes not until midnight. She stopped making excuses. The pretense of our marriage had become too exhausting for her to maintain. I continued playing my role, the reasonable, rational husband who was processing the situation. I didn't argue. I didn't rage. I simply existed in the same space as her, which seemed to frustrate her more than any confrontation would have. "We need to talk about next steps," she announced one evening, barely looking up from her phone. "Okay," I said, setting down the financial report I'd been reviewing. She seemed prepared for resistance, and my easy compliance threw her off balance. "Okay. Just like that. What would you like to discuss?" She sat down across from me, and I could see she'd rehearsed this too. "I think we should start the divorce process. I've been looking into it, and if we both agree to terms, it can be quick and painless." "What terms did you have in mind?" I asked. "Well, the standard arrangement. We split everything 50-50. The house, the accounts, the investments. We've both contributed to this marriage." "Have we?" I interrupted gently. Her eyes flashed. "Yes, we have. I've supported your career, managed our home. While sleeping with my best friend," I finished. She had the grace to look briefly uncomfortable. "That's separate. The divorce settlement is about fairly dividing marital assets, not about personal issues." "Personal issues." That's what she called it. "I see," I said. "And you've consulted with a lawyer about this?" "I've done research," she said defensively. "I know my rights." "That's good," I said. "I think we should both have legal representation. To keep things fair." She relaxed slightly. "So you're agreeing to the 50-50 split?" "I'm agreeing we should both have lawyers work out what's fair and legal. That's the right way to do this, don't you think?" She studied me suspiciously, trying to find the trap. But I kept my expression open, reasonable. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll find a lawyer this week." "Good idea," I said, and returned to my report. Over the next 2 weeks, my private investigator continued building the case. More photos. Video footage of them entering his apartment together, leaving the next morning. Evidence of overnight stays at hotels. He'd even managed to capture them discussing me and the divorce, thanks to a lunch meeting on an outdoor patio. "She's telling him you're going to be reasonable about the split," the investigator told me, playing the audio. "He seems surprised you're not fighting it." In the recording, Daniel's voice came through clearly. "Are you sure he's just going to agree to half? That doesn't sound like him." "He's in denial," my wife responded. "He thinks if he's cooperative, maybe I'll change my mind. It's actually kind of pathetic." Pathetic. The word stung, but I filed it away with everything else. Margaret was building our strategy. "The key is timing," she explained during one of our meetings. "Let her file first. Let her show her hand, what she thinks she's entitled to, what she's claiming. Then we respond with everything we have. How long? I asked. Based on what you've told me, she'll file within the month. She's impatient, and she wants to start her new life. That works in our favor. Meanwhile, I continued documenting everything. Every late night, every lie, every expense. I'd become a ghost in my own home, observing and recording but not engaging. My wife noticed. "You're being weird," she said one evening. "How so?" "You're too calm. Too distant. It's creepy." I looked up from my laptop. "Would you prefer I lose my temper? Beg you to stay?" She didn't answer, but I could see the yes in her eyes. She wanted the drama, the validation that I was destroyed by her leaving. My composure was an insult to her ego. "I'm just trying to be mature about this," I said. "Isn't that what you wanted?" She left the room without responding. 3 weeks after our initial conversation about divorce, she came home with papers. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, a habit I'd maintained because it gave me something to do with my hands. "I filed," she announced, dropping the documents on the counter. "You've been served." I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up the papers. Her petition was exactly what we'd anticipated. She was claiming half of everything: the house, the investments, the business assets. She was also asking for spousal support, $2,000 a month for 5 years. "This seems fair," she said, watching my face. "My lawyer said it's standard for the length of our marriage." I read through the document carefully. She'd claimed that we'd grown apart, that the marriage was irretrievably broken. No mention of adultery. No mention of Daniel. She was trying to keep it clean, no fault. "When do I need to respond?" I asked. "You have 30 days. But we don't need to drag this out. If you agree to these terms, we can be done in a few months." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd married was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. In her place was someone calculating and cold, someone who'd been planning this exit strategy while lying beside me every night. "I'll have my lawyer review this," I said. "You got a lawyer?" She seemed surprised, almost offended. "You suggested we both have representation," I reminded her. "To keep things fair." She didn't like that, but she couldn't argue with her own logic. "Fine. But don't try to fight me on this. I'm entitled to half. That's the law." After she left, to celebrate with Daniel, no doubt, I called Margaret. "She filed," I said. "Perfect," Margaret replied. "Forward me everything. It's time to show her what fair actually means." I scanned the documents and sent them over. Then I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The game was halfway over, and she didn't even know she was losing. Margaret's response to my wife's divorce petition was a masterpiece of legal warfare. It arrived at my wife's temporary address, Daniel's apartment, another detail we'd documented, exactly 28 days after I'd been served. I wasn't there when she opened it, but Daniel called me that evening. His voice was tight, angry. "What the hell, man? Your lawyer is going after everything. This is vindictive." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "I'm just responding to the petition. Isn't that how divorce works?" "You're claiming adultery. You're trying to deny her any support. I'm presenting facts," I interrupted. "If you have a problem with facts, maybe you should examine your choices." He hung up on me. 20 minutes later, my wife called. She was screaming before I even said hello. "You bastard! You've been planning this. You've been spying on me." "I've been documenting the truth," I corrected. "There's a difference. You can't do this. You can't use my personal life against me." Actually, in an at-fault state, I can. Adultery affects spousal support, asset division, everything. Your lawyer should have explained that to you. "We'll fight this," she hissed. "We'll prove you're lying." I have phone records, credit card statements, photographs, videos, and witness testimony. I have you on audio discussing the affair. I have hotel receipts. I have 6 months of documented evidence. Tell me, which part am I lying about? The silence on the other end was satisfying. You're not the man I married, she finally said, her voice small. No, I agreed. The man you married would have let you destroy him. Consider this my evolution. She hung up. Margaret had filed a counterpetition that told the complete story. We included the adultery claim, supported by overwhelming evidence. We detailed how marital funds had been used to support the affair, every hotel room, every dinner, every gift charged to our joint accounts. We established that the house had been purchased primarily with my inheritance, that the investment accounts had been built from my income, that my business, started before the marriage, had grown through my efforts alone. We weren't asking for a 50-50 split. We were asking for justice. Our petition requested that she receive only her legal minimum, essentially, what she'd contributed financially to the marriage, which, according to our documentation, was very little. Her part-time freelance work had brought in maybe $15,000 a year, most of which she'd spent on herself. We were also denying all spousal support on grounds of adultery. The next few weeks were chaotic. My wife hired a more aggressive attorney, who immediately began making threats. They'd fight the adultery claim. They'd argue that I'd condoned the affair by not confronting it immediately. They'd claim I'd psychologically abused her, driving her into Daniel's arms. Let them argue, Margaret said during our strategy meeting. We have timestamps on everything. We can prove exactly when you discovered the affair and how you responded. Their narrative won't hold up. Meanwhile, my wife's relationship with Daniel was deteriorating. The stress of the divorce, the legal bills, the public exposure of their affair, it was taking its toll. The investigator had continued monitoring them, and his reports painted a picture of increasing dysfunction. Arguments in parking lots. Daniel being seen with another woman at a bar. My wife showing up at his office, causing a scene. She's realizing he's not her knight in shining armor, Margaret observed. He was just convenient, and now he's inconvenient. The preliminary hearing arrived. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, me and Margaret on one side, my wife and her attorney on the other. Daniel wasn't there, interestingly. The judge reviewed both petitions, along with the evidence we'd submitted. He was an older man, probably in his 60s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen every variation of human betrayal. This is extensive documentation, he said, looking at my wife's attorney. Does your client dispute the adultery claim? The attorney hesitated. Your Honor, we believe that the affair, while regrettable, should not impact the equitable distribution of marital assets. That's not what I asked, the judge interrupted. Does your client dispute that the affair occurred? Another hesitation. No, Your Honor. And does your client dispute that marital funds were used to facilitate this affair? Your Honor, the amounts in question are relatively small. I'll take that as a no. The judge made a note. I'm ordering a full financial discovery from both parties. All accounts, all income sources, all expenditures for the last 3 years. We'll reconvene in 60 days. As we left the courthouse, my wife tried to approach me. Margaret stepped between us. All communication goes through attorneys, Margaret said firmly. Please, my wife said, and I was shocked to see tears in her eyes. Can we just talk? Like adults? I looked at her for a long moment. We stopped being adults who could talk when you started sleeping with my best friend. You made your choice. I made a mistake, she said desperately. I see that now. Daniel and I, it's not working. We were caught up in something, but it wasn't real. What we had, what you and I had, that was real. No, I said quietly. What we had was me building a life while you planned to take half of it. That's what was real. I'll withdraw the petition, she said quickly. We can work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. She looked genuinely devastated, genuinely remorseful. Then I remembered the audio recording. It's actually kind of pathetic. You had 6 months to have this revelation, I said. 6 months while you were lying to me every day. Now you're having it because the consequences are here. That's not remorse. That's just fear. Please. The answer is no, I said. See you in 60 days. Margaret and I walked away, leaving her standing on the courthouse steps. In the car, Margaret said, she's going to try to settle now. She knows she's losing. What should I offer? Nothing, Margaret said. She forfeited her right to generosity when she committed adultery and tried to steal half your assets. We're going to trial, and we're going to win. I nodded, watching the city pass by outside the window. 60 days until the next hearing. 60 days until she realized just how completely she'd destroyed her own life. I could wait. The financial discovery phase revealed even more than I'd anticipated. My wife had opened a secret credit card, in her name only, that she'd maxed out buying gifts for Daniel. Expensive watches, designer clothes, weekend trips. Nearly $30,000 in debt that she'd planned to bury in the divorce settlement. When Margaret presented this to the judge at the next hearing, my wife's attorney looked genuinely shocked. Either she hadn't told him, or he'd been hoping we wouldn't find it. Your Honor, Margaret said, her voice sharp and clear. This demonstrates a pattern of financial deception and misappropriation of what my client believed were marital savings. Mrs. Hartley was simultaneously demanding half of my client's assets while secretly accumulating debt to support an extramarital affair. The judge's expression grew colder. Is there an explanation for this credit card? My wife's attorney whispered urgently with her, then addressed the court. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that she made poor financial decisions during a time of emotional distress. Emotional distress that she caused, Margaret interrupted, by engaging in a 6-month affair with her husband's best friend, lying repeatedly, and planning to leave the marriage with maximum financial benefit to herself. The judge held up a hand. I've seen enough. I'm ready to make a preliminary ruling on spousal support, pending the final asset division. This was it. The moment that would set the tone for everything else. Based on the evidence presented, the documented adultery, the misuse of marital funds, and the deliberate financial deception, I'm denying the petitioner's request for spousal support. My wife made a small sound, quickly silenced by her attorney's hand on her arm. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering that the secret credit card debt be assigned entirely to the petitioner, as it was incurred without the respondent's knowledge and used exclusively for personal, non-marital purposes. Margaret didn't smile, but I could feel her satisfaction. The final trial came 6 weeks later. By then, my wife's life had completely unraveled. Daniel had broken up with her. The investigator confirmed he was dating someone new, someone without complicated legal baggage. She'd moved into a small apartment she could barely afford. Her part-time freelance work wasn't enough to cover her bills, especially with the credit card debt. She'd tried multiple times to reach out to me, offering to settle for increasingly smaller amounts. 25% of the assets. 20%. 15%. Margaret advised me to ignore all offers. We're winning, she said. Don't give up ground now. The trial itself was brutal. Margaret methodically presented our evidence, the phone records, the photos, the videos, the financial documents. She called the private investigator as a witness. She even subpoenaed Daniel, who was forced to testify about the affair, looking miserable in his suit, avoiding my eyes the entire time. My wife's attorney tried to argue that I'd been emotionally unavailable, that I'd worked too much, that the marriage had been failing long before the affair. But without evidence of abuse or abandonment, the arguments fell flat. When I took the stand, I kept my testimony simple and factual. Yes, I'd worked hard to build our financial security. Yes, I'd believed we were happy. No, I had never suspected the affair until she confessed. Yes, I'd documented everything carefully because I wanted to protect what I'd built. Did you love your wife? Her attorney asked during cross-examination. Yes, I said. Very much. And when she confessed the affair, were you angry? Eventually, I said. First I was shocked. Then hurt. Then angry. But mostly, I was determined not to be destroyed by someone else's choices. So you decided to destroy her instead? Margaret objected, but I'd already answered. I decided to protect myself using the legal system we have for exactly these situations. If that destroyed her, she destroyed herself. The trial lasted 3 days. At the end, the judge took less than an hour to reach his decision. In the matter of the dissolution of marriage, he began, and the courtroom fell silent. I find that the petitioner engaged in adultery, misused marital funds, and concealed significant debt. These factors, combined with the evidence regarding the source of marital assets, lead me to the following conclusions. He outlined the asset division. The house, purchased primarily with my inheritance and my income, mine. The investment accounts, built from my earnings, mine. The business, entirely mine, as it had been started before the marriage. She would receive her personal belongings, her car, which was fully paid off, and approximately $15,000 representing her direct financial contributions to the marriage. No spousal support. All credit card debt, hers. My wife was crying silently, her attorney's hand on her shoulder. Furthermore, the judge said, I want to address something that troubles me about this case. Marriage is a partnership built on trust and fidelity. When those foundations are betrayed, there are consequences. The petitioner made choices, deliberate, repeated choices, that destroyed this marriage. She does not get to benefit financially from that destruction. He closed the file. This court is adjourned. As people filed out of the courtroom, I sat still for a moment, letting it sink in. 8 years of my life, ended. But protected. Preserved. Not stolen. Margaret packed her briefcase efficiently. Congratulations, she said. You won. Did I? I asked. She paused, studying me. You kept what was yours. You held someone accountable for their actions. Yes, you won. Outside the courthouse, Daniel was waiting. He approached cautiously, hands in his pockets. Can we talk? He asked. No, I said simply. I know I screwed up. I know I destroyed our friendship. But I want you to know. I don't care what you want me to know, I interrupted. You made your choices. You chose to sleep with my wife. You chose to lie to me for 6 months. You chose to help her plan to take half of everything I'd built. Those choices have consequences. She told me you'd agreed to everything. She made it sound like you were okay with it. I laughed, a harsh sound. And you believed her? Or did you just want to believe her because it made what you were doing easier? He had no answer for that. We're not friends, I said. We'll never be friends again. And honestly, looking at you now, I don't think we ever really were. I walked away, leaving him standing there. 6 months later, I'd sold the house, too many memories, and bought a sleek downtown condo. I'd thrown myself into expanding my business, which was thriving. The money I hadn't lost in the divorce had been reinvested wisely. I heard through mutual acquaintances that my ex-wife was struggling, working multiple jobs to pay off her debt, living in a studio apartment. Daniel had married his new girlfriend in a small ceremony. They hadn't invited her. I didn't feel satisfaction at her struggles. I didn't feel much of anything, actually. The whole experience had left me cautious, guarded in a way I'd never been before. But I'd learned something valuable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to be destroyed. It's standing up, documenting the truth, and letting justice run its course. Would I trust someone that completely again? Probably not. Would I marry again? Maybe, someday, with better judgment. But I'd survived. I'd protected what I'd built. And in the end, when someone had looked me in the eye and said, if you can't handle it, divorce me, I'd done exactly that, on my terms, not theirs. That was enough.